Okay, welcome to episode 5 of GamerWatch. I am one of your hosts, Rom. Ash is with me yet again, unfortunately.
Hey, what's
Say
up,
hi,
guys?
Ash.
It's very fortunate, actually.
Why is that? What do you have
Well,
to
you see,
bring to the
today
table?
we're going to be talking about guilds. So, as you may know, in our experience, we played a decent amount of MMOs, and we have
Yeah.
quite a bit of experience with guilds, plus some good stories to tell about them. So, today we just wanted to break
So,
down like the different aspects of guilds, things like recruitment philosophy, roles, interactions, social
mhm.
interactions, along with like loot and other minute details with it.
Okay, so then specifically, like, is there anywhere you want to start? Do you want to just get started right ahead in the establishment
Yeah, let's
of a
start from the
guild?
beginning of a guild.
Okay. All right, you have, well, so, like, well, let's go with this then. How many, like, sort of like the most major guilds? Like, what kind of guilds have you been in? And, like, how do you see, after your experience in all of them, how do you see, like, what's your view on, like, the establishing of a
I think
guild?
the most crucial thing in the establishment of a guild is finding like a core group, a core I would say officers, a core group of raiders to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important to know where you want to like what kind type of guild you're looking for, because I feel like
Yeah.
personally from all these guilds I've been in, a decent amount of guilds they want to transition to something greater, like the heroic raiders, or like medium tier raiders or low tier raiders, and they're trying to get into something higher.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem that comes with that is that they're trying to jump ahead way too hard, right? And so you
Yeah.
start off with the disconnect of like what your expectations are and what maybe your group is capable of right now and how much time everyone can commit to it, because they're used to one type of
Yeah.
content and now you're trying to like expedite that into something else. So I think it takes.
So, like, have you ever been around for, like, the establishment of a guild? Like, have you ever been around in one that has been around? I guess I should say, like, I think we've all been around where we, like, screw
Right,
around
yeah.
with friends or whatever, establish a guild on a random server or something. But, like, I mean, one that's actually become something sort of that you've stuck with beyond, like, say, 6 months.
um I have been in two guilds that's been longer than 6 months, 1 year
Yeah.
each. I haven't been around, so I haven't been longer than one that's been longer than like 6 months for something that's. I've been with, I started one, but I've been with one I joined like in
Yeah.
the middle.
Like,
Wait,
signing
what?
guild charters. Like, signing guild
You
charters,
know,
like,
I
to
have
that
not stayed around
effect.
for a year, but I've seen the effect of
Yeah.
people trying to transition into trying to change like what the
Mm-hmm.
philosophy of the guild is, and most of the time it does not go very well, or it takes a lot. A lot of people leave. Most people like rebrand their guild or reshape it.
Yeah,
It's really
absolutely.
hard, from what I've seen, to keep the guild intact while changing the core philosophy of the guild itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, so I've been around in, like, say, probably through two guilds since the beginning. Also been around with, like, through multiple, like, I guess, guild mergers and stuff like that. We could talk about guild mergers later, but, like, um, I would say yeah, probably two or three guilds. For over 6 months after being there from, like, sort of the semi beginning, if not the beginning. Uh, and yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times people just do it on a whim without really a laid out plan or anything to that effect. Like, like, when you're starting a business, you kind of, to compare it to starting a business, you always want to have, like, a business plan and have, like, a strategy in terms of, like, how to grow. But I feel like a lot of times when guilds start these days, like, there's gonna be something out there that already fits you. Like, there's been so many guilds, like, it feels like at this point there's really, I mean, unless you want to keep your close knit circle under your watch and sort of, like, do things your own way, just for the sake of having that power. There's not really like, it's really hard to give, like, established justification for, like, starting a new guild. I don't know. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
definitely. Yeah, most
Yeah.
people don't take maybe the guild seriously per se, and what like if they actually want to make like a mythic raiding guild, like a high level raiding guild,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to start a social guild, right? Everybody's just joining, you know, everything's nice and
Mm-hmm.
easy, right? Once you try to have a
Mm-hmm.
purpose to it and it doesn't have like a foundation to it, it can crumble really easily, right?
Very, very much so. Yeah, especially like for those that like mass
Exactly, yeah.
invite,
Yeah,
like
you
through
go from this
add-ons and things
huge
like
social
that.
guild
Yeah.
that's like, okay, guys, come here. We do Mythic Plus, we do PvP, we do casual, heroic, casual, normal, right? And then they're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's. I think this happened with my guild recently, right? They wanted to do Mythic. I joined a more social guild or more
Yeah.
casual guild since running rating cutting edge type of deal because I wanted something more
Yeah.
casual, something more relaxed, more casual, right?
Mm-hmm.
My guild ran into
Mm-hmm.
this problem. They started as like a more chill guild. The GM wanted he did like first couple bosses in Mythic. He was like a heroic Mythic raider. He wanted something more
Yeah.
casual. Started a more casual guild, right? And that was great, right? That's easy to start. Just invite people. Everyone's looking for
Mm-hmm.
friends in the game. Really easy to do. But then he wanted to raid Mythic. So then you run into these couple issues. A, your raiders are not ready for that, right? The people you're recruiting
Mm-hmm.
were not there initially to raid Mythic, or else they would have joined a Mythic guild, right? So you have these people
Right.
who maybe skill wise or whatever it is are not ready for Mythic, right? Then so
Mm-hmm.
that's number one, right? Then the skill level they're not there. Also the time commitment, right? It's one thing to do a heroic run where you get like 10 people and you can also plug people, and it's just 1 day a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Right.
Mythic usually you require at least 3 to 6 hours, right? 2 days, 1 to 2 days
Easy.
commitment.
Easily. No, not one day. It's very rare you'll find a
I mean, you
mythic
could
guild
do
one
four
day
or
a
five
week, right?
bosses if
I would
you're,
think
yeah, which is
you
not
could. You
nothing
could,
to sneeze
but
at, right?
I
That's
mean,
still something, but
to me, like, I don't think like no, it is nothing to sneeze at. I would agree with that. It's just like I feel like, I mean, unless it's just simply exists because of the fact that people only want to raid, can only fit a 1 day raid day a week into their schedule. Um, I feel like that a guild like that would burn out real fast just because they would lose people who aspire for
right,
more.
exactly.
But
That's why
I
you
don't
have
know.
like
That's just
that
me.
disconnect of like where the goal is, right? So yeah, you have
Yeah.
that. You need at least 2 days. So I would say so the time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be a proper mythic guild, 2 days at least. So you have the time commitment, the skill level,
Yeah.
and maybe you're not as a GM and the officers, you're not ready to deal with
Yeah.
what is necessary or what it takes, right, to run a guild like that.
Yeah.
Because you have things like loot distribution, which didn't matter in heroic really. You have social interactions
Mm-hmm.
between different philosophies, how they approach the game, and what they want,
Mm-hmm.
along with recruitment philosophy, stuff like that, right? And recruitment in general. How do you approach? Who do you want to
Absolutely.
recruit, and how do you? And what do you look for? Is it someone who does good mechanics, or is it someone who can do good DPS
Yeah.
who can teach the mechanics? Is it someone who just is always there, right? You want a body. So where do you look at? I mean, we all wish for someone who's like 100 parser, right? Does everything well, right? But that's not the
Of
reality of it.
course.
So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what would make a break a guild early on, like just to be quite honest, is like how they distribute the power, the roles, so to speak. Just because a guild lead can't, I mean, no matter what, almost no matter what activity you hope for, whether it's PvP, uh, like what, like specifically arenas, rated BGs, heroic rating, mythic rating, normal rating, even. There needs to be some sort of split, some like spreading of like roles because a GM can definitely. I think you and I would agree. A GM
yeah,
can't
of
do it all
course,
by themselves. 9 times
that's
out
a
of 10,
huge amount of work.
99 times out of 100. It is. It really is because, I mean, running a guild in itself is, it can be pretty cumbersome. But then I mean, raid leading or the handling of loot. These are things that need to be, divvied up in these assignments among officers. And you need to find people who can run those sort of roles with the same, in line with the same vision of the guild
True,
lead,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah, so like for instance, I have been in a few guilds where I have seen sort of officers. They sort of have their own take on different sort of on different let's say different visions compared to the guild lead in terms of like who gets the loot or who gets recruited. Recruitment itself is another role, by the way, like just an entirely like separate thing. But that I would say of all the roles, that probably needs to most align with the guild lead. Otherwise, there's just going to be a conflict eventually. Um, so yeah, like if those vision if those like how people hoped what they hope to accomplish, if officers and guild lead don't line up on that, that's just a recipe for disaster
Right.
for
So
sure.
I mean, we can start with guild loot. How do you think it should be distributed?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, we're specifically talking about
Right.
obviously PVE, right? So like, I've always been of the mind. Well, okay. There's no matter what, you gotta have the rules laid out. There's a few different ways you could go about it, and I
I
wouldn't
think it's now
disagree with
easier
any
though,
of
right?
those ways.
Because there's no master loot.
Yeah, now it's easier, but like, I mean, this goes beyond just Warcraft. Obviously, with this can go into other
Right.
MMOs or whatever. So like, I mean, if let's say Master Loot was back somehow implemented back, and Blizzard goes on and on about giving players player agency. Let's see if they somehow miraculously end up doing that for Shadowlands, where they give us Master Loot back, and let guilds determine how they gear up. Um, I would definitely start with like, I mean, it's a combination of sort of I guess how long a person's seniority, as well as like, I mean, some people might say seniority doesn't matter, but it does matter to an extent for like especially the big pieces like weapons or big trinkets or whatever. Combination of seniority and then like uh performance and attendance, like these are all like factors that come into it. But then all things being even, you go, at least to me, the way to always go is DPS, tanks, and then healers, right? Like, I don't know, that's just how I see it. I don't know how you necessarily
Yeah, I
see
mean,
it.
I do agree with the seniority, but up to an extent. I think as long as the person's been there at
Yeah.
least 1 to 2 months, right? Like they're established
Yeah.
within the guild, then it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter after that. Whether you've been there for a year or at least 2 to 3 months, I don't think it matters. As long as you prove that you're not just staying there just because you have a genuine interest in the guild and you really want to like be a part of it,
Sure.
then I'm fine with it, right? Like
Yeah.
you've shown up, you've been consistent. So
What would your cutoff be? You
two
said
yeah
two
two to
months?
two maybe 3 months, whatever that timeline is for you for them to get well versed in the guild, be integrated.
As long as it's known
Wait,
ahead of
what?
time. As long as that like threshold is known ahead of time, I guess. Like it's communicated ahead of time. Like, hey, once you get to this point, then like you communicate that with the people you recruit.
Sure. I mean,
Would you say that?
I would say for me personally, I don't necessarily look at it as like a time frame. That's just for me personally, for what I feel
Yeah.
it would take for someone to get integrated with the guild. It more comes to the
Okay.
point where, so you said seniority. I'd say when it comes to that, they're there for enough
Yeah.
amount of time, and it looks like they consistently come and they show up and they're going to stay for like a long time. I don't think seniority matters,
Yeah.
and usually for me, I get that feeling around 2 months, right? Like that's like eight
Okay.
weeks, 16 rate days at least. So
That's
I give
fair.
it. I don't
Yeah.
say 2 months as like it has to be 2 months. I just say 2 months as that's usually how long for me to get the feel that someone's within like staying in the guild, right? So then for me
That's
personally,
fair. Yeah.
so my mindset's different. Like I care more about the high end rating, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think performance matters huge, right? And it does not mean end all be
Of
all, but
course.
I prefer to give trinkets to the DPS or I mean trinkets, what are weapons to the gear to the DPS that
Mm-hmm.
that matter, like that really bring the A game. Obviously consistency.
Yeah.
I think consistency and skill level are pretty not equal, but like consistency is way out there, right? If you're not consistent, there's no point giving you the stuff, right? But though
Sure.
that's what
Yeah.
matters for me the most. Like I want to know that the gear is given it to the right people who would most maximize it, right? For the class
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So I know other people have different opinions on that because they look at guilds a different way. It's more social or more whatever, right? And some people give it to just people who need gear in general. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I were to progress the most, I would say give it to the higher end to the higher end players in the guild, just because.
So then the only issue with that would be that that requires the loot distributors, the master looter, so to speak, to know everything about every class in essence, wouldn't they? Or at least have some idea of what belongs to who?
Right, and you
Would you
can.
agree with that? Like you think that that
I
needs to be
think
on
on
them?
them or another officer to do some research, and usually what I've seen from
Okay.
like really high end guilds, they have some method of doing
Mm-hmm.
that, or they usually go about it right. When you're
Yeah.
starting off Mythic, I don't think it matters who you give it to per se, because there's more fundamental issues at hand than who's getting the gear. But if you're like
Yeah.
decently high end, right? I would think that if you're at that level, you probably have a general idea of the classes, right? And obviously an officer or the GM
That's
needs to
true.
be more well versed. Or it's what some people do
Mm-hmm.
is each raider gives like a want list, like a BIS list to the GM to give lead to look at.
Yeah.
So it can be however method you take. Yes, they need to be more well versed in it. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
multiple ways of going about that. So it's not as clear cut. But I do agree with you. They need to be more knowledgeable about the classes in general.
Yeah, like, and so I mean that just creates more work for the leadership up top, and that I can't even imagine that would, like, let's say we took your example of them sending a best in slot list to the loot, whoever the master looter or the GM or whatever. That's probably takes like a team to sort of figure out and like prioritize, like, okay, if this falls to this, we give it to this person because the next time another piece drops, the other person will be able to get a piece because they favor that piece more. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, they got to sort of
Yeah,
stagger the
exactly. And
loot
usually,
through the
yeah. But so
lists.
my previous
Yeah.
guild, we also did DKP, one guild I did.
Yeah.
So basically, if anyone
Yeah.
doesn't know, it's each time you show up and each time you kill a boss, you get points, and
Yeah.
whoever has the highest amount of points for that piece or whatever piece you're rolling off, right, gets the loot item, right?
Yeah. Whoever
Exactly,
bids the
right.
most, right? They can use
Yeah.
their
So then
points
you
and
get the
bid.
points
Yeah.
subtracted, so you can save up for a piece or whatever, right?
I like that system though. That's
Yeah.
not a
I mean, it's more
terrible system to
it
me.
reduces loot drama quite a bit, right? Because it's like, oh, it's just a point
It
system. You
does.
can't blame me.
Yeah.
It's the point system, right?
Yeah, externalizes the sort of the distribution.
Right.
Yeah. I don't
And
mind
so
that.
how we did is we have like a need and a want, and then like a off spec type of button, right? So I mean, you could do
Yeah.
that from like master looter. Like I'm assuming there's probably many ways of going about this than just straight up like trying to do it all by hand. You could add like a need and want type of
Mhm.
deal. So if no one needs it, then it
Mhm.
goes to the want people, right? So like one
Mhm.
trinket, like so let's say you have a melee trinket, right? That's between what you how many melee are you thinking? Like 5, 8 melee maybe at max. So
Yeah, something
right, you
like that. 8 at
pull
max, sure.
probably a diverse amount of people, classes. How
Mhm.
many is that trinket good for? Probably maybe half of them usually. So when it comes down to it, it's not that big of work, I would say. So then you just look at those four people.
But imagine doing that over every piece of loot though. That's where I'm saying the work comes in
Sure, sure. I
a
mean,
little bit. Yeah.
I'm not denying that, but I think when it comes to like just random armor pieces, you generally have a good idea of
Mhm.
who's putting in the work, mechanics wise, consistency wise, and all that. And if multiple people have
Sure.
it, then
Yeah.
well, what we did, well, what I did when I was an officer, right? We were in the same officer guild. I believe
Mhm.
we just
Mm.
we after we looked at these pieces and they're both equally high level players, it was down
Yeah.
to because like when they got the piece last, right? And also like what they would bring
Yeah.
to like the next bosses. So
Yeah.
I think there's always a way to like break it down, right? There's never going to be.
We had loot
Yeah, we had
council,
loot
didn't
council.
we? When we were in that guild,
Yeah, we
didn't
were
we?
all in
We
loot
did loot
council.
council
So
for a while. Yeah. It was. It was. Yeah. It just created a lot
yeah,
of
the
like
problem with that
discussion and
is
debate within even the loot
we
council.
I like the problem was not like deciding who should go to. We had a different philosophy on what how
Yeah.
loot should be distributed, right? Because some people was like, oh, people are low
Yeah.
level geared, they need gear, right? Versus some other people
Yeah.
were like me included on the philosophy that it should be going to like the people who I would say deserve it more, right? Quotation marks deserve it more,
Yeah.
and that's where it led to a difference in philosophy of loot.
Yeah, because I would say like, okay, for not to,
Right.
we won't be giving like names or anything, but like, so our guild lead and maybe some other people were maybe a little more lenient and casual whereas I'm probably like I love healing at a high level, but I'm not like cutting edge or anything. I'm like the tier below cutting edge. So and then you would say I would say you were the most hardcore of the group,
Yeah,
right?
I would say so.
Yeah, so there were probably three different sort of groups, like and three different within not even within a lot of people. It was like five or six of us on the loot
Yeah.
council. That was it. But that also got the more people are in the loot council, the more varying the philosophies you'll get. Because I mean, it was annoying. Sometimes I think we were at some points we were at like maybe seven people on the loot council because we were including all the officers, we were including the GM, and then we were including the raid lead. It got to be a lot.
Right. What was our solution to that? Didn't we like
So
break it down to only a couple people doing it?
I think so. I eventually volunteered to get off the loot council because I know I didn't want to deal with it. I hated being on loot council because I saw that like there were
Mm.
like these conflicts and like I don't know, being in the middle, I didn't feel like I really contributed to much. Uh, so like I don't know, maybe it would have been more efficient to cut out maybe the extremes and then keep the people who like were in the middle much rather than the other way around. But maybe the other way around also presents a broad range of ideas,
Sure.
um, like in terms of how to approach the problems of loot distribution. So yeah, I mean, we're getting into the details a little bit, but like it didn't necessarily. I don't think we had drama too much,
Well,
if at all.
yeah.
Like I think we did a decent job. There were
Yeah,
some
there was
times,
that one
weren't
piece,
there?
the glaives from Nighthold or Tomb.
Wait, what happened with that?
Yeah, the
Oh,
trinket,
the
the glaives. I
trinket,
forget what the actual name is called.
the off
Yeah,
the
yeah,
moon
yeah.
boss, right?
I don't know what the name was.
Yeah, I
So,
forgot about that.
so we
Oh
had
yeah,
glaives drop.
I
Okay,
forgot about
and
that.
this is a prime example of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay, so we had glaives, mythic glaives
yeah.
drop. We had, I think we, no, was it heroic or mythic? I think it was mythic.
This
Yeah,
had to
so it
be mythic.
dropped,
Yeah.
and we initially gave it to. I think it was initially given to one of the players who we would say is not as consistent or not as skill level as the other people, right?
Yeah.
And so we gave it to him. I think someone gave it, one of the officers, or yeah, the GM gave it to him initially, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
some other people were like, "Well, wait a minute, we want that, and we've have the numbers to back it
Yeah.
up, and we've been consistent also. Like our tank wanted it just to pad, right? Our tank wanted to
Yeah.
pad,
Yeah.
and he's been there the longest. He has a seniority. Another guy's been there medium
He was
amount.
an
I think
officer.
he came after me, but he's
Yeah.
he's really high skill level. He wanted it. I think even I wanted it. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I think I wanted it. Just, I mean, it's a good trinket, right?
Yeah.
And then this other guy got it
Mm-hmm.
initially. So there was a huge discussion about who gets it, and in the end, we rolled right for it, and
Mm-hmm.
like the GM decided to roll for it instead of making like a proper decision or talking with us. Well, I mean, we gave our opinions, but
Yeah.
he rolled for it. Like that same guy who already got initially got it again. So the other guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
who the DPS who came after me, right? He left, I think.
Yeah.
Right, he left. The tank,
Yeah.
another tank was kind of mad about it because he cares about his DPS. And then I
Yeah.
think there was the little discourse around everyone else also because there was mixed feelings about how that situation should have been handled, right? So I mean that
There were.
shows
Yeah.
if you don't have a proper philosophy, a guild philosophy in it from the GM down,
Yeah.
you're gonna run into these issues and you're gonna start losing players.
Yeah, that was probably our issue. I would say, like, if we had to like diagnose the issue that came up, I did forget about this issue, but now I
Right.
remember it crystal clear. What needed to happen is that, and I'm going to take this lesson sort of forward if I ever become an officer or anything again in a guild. Ideally, I don't want to, but hopefully, what needs to happen is that the guild lead just needs to be like, hey, this is how I feel. Let's please like lean this way. If like all things being equal, if we have a tough decision, let's lean this way because that's the feel of the guild. I think that would have been a fair and the right thing to do. And then maybe in a loot council sort of, when sort of tumultuous sort of things happen where people are fighting over gear, we could have then determined, okay, we will lean that way with him. Like he's not necessarily saying lean that way all the time, but when again all things are being equal, that's like the important time to do that, because it is up to the guild leader to determine sort of the identity of the guild. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, that
I'm glad
was.
you brought that up. I
I
completely
mean, I was
forgot
one of
about
the
that.
ones that
That
wanted
was
to go
tasty.
to the other DPS because he would have
Yeah,
used it the most. Um,
for sure.
I
Yeah.
think the tank was mad because uh, he wanted. I think he wanted it for DPS padding at that point.
Sure.
So
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that I wanted. Not I wanted, but there was a discourse between certain officers and the GM about how it should have gone. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It just that was a large amount of like conflict sometimes. Like philosophy within the guild.
Yeah, and I mean it's really frustrating because loot is always temporary, and like raiders don't
But yeah, I mean, at the
necessarily
same time, you're
like
putting your time
they
in,
just they
so
get caught up. They put their time in, but don't get me wrong, but like it'll be there next week. Like each raid tier is about 6 to 8 months usually, so six, maybe a little less, 4 to 6 months. So it's like there will be other times where that trinket will drop, or there will be other pieces of loot that will be equal in power, close to it. Like, and even if you get it, like it's temporary. It's still temporary.
yeah.
I know they're putting in the work, but they also have to understand that they're part
Right.
of
I
something
mean,
a little
that's
bit bigger.
fine, but
Yeah.
I think just having proper philosophies like reduces a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, having everything be known up front is the way to sort of address as many and prevent as many issues as possible, whether it's loot, whether it's how you treat
Right.
BOEs or
Oh, BOEs, dude.
whatever it might be. And
I've had some guilds.
yeah,
I have had some guilds. They're like, you have to give BOE.
yeah,
So the guild before it, you have to give BOEs to the
yeah,
guild, and
yeah.
I personally thought that was stupid because I get if they need to sell off the gold for it per se.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like
Yeah.
if you loot the BOE, it should be on you, right? It's your BOE now.
See, if master loot was still the thing, I would agree with that. Just because a guild ultimately determines how the loot should drop, and you wouldn't have looted that BOE if you weren't there with the other 19 other people to begin with. And what do people want from their guilds? They want flasks, they want repairs, and they want mats
I
whenever
would
they
be
need them.
I would be
I mean,
fine
something
bringing my
has
own
to fund
mats
that
if I can
somewhere.
keep the BOE because I assure you that BOE is worth way more than what.
Okay, no, no, and fair, but I think that if a guild makes it known up front that they'll provide all that, if you also, donate the BOEs, then that means guilds don't have to sell runs and things like that and do something extra additional beyond raid days, which is really tough to do in itself, usually from the guilds I've been in, selling different carries and things like that. So, there's a balance there. I do agree with having to donate BOEs, but I also understand that right now everything is self individual loot, so it's tough to sort of enforce that.
True.
Yeah. So I mean, going from there, like, uh, you know, guild drama is definitely something that's a huge sort of
Right.
point of contention in terms of no guild is immune to it as far as I'm concerned. Like any guild that claims that they're drama free is bullshitting, and like there's always going to be something. When you get 20 egos in the same room, same Discord lobby, shit's gonna go down eventually. So I mean, like, how would you like? Is there any like? Okay, let's talk about that. Have you ever come across any guild drama
Quite a bit.
yourself?
Quite a bit. Where do I start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any spicy deets?
Okay. Let's see. Let me start my most recent one. Okay, my most recent guild.
Oh boy.
Right. Yeah. So, I would say.
Are you sure
Wait,
you want
what?
to go into this one? Are you sure you want to go into this one?
Yeah, I
The
think
one I think
I
you're gonna
mean,
go into.
why not, right? Why not? So the most recent
Okay,
one, there's been
sure. All
the
right.
drama with. So the problem I see a lot, actually, before I go into it, the problem I see a lot with guild dramas
Yeah.
is there cliques forming inside the guild, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have various cliques
Mm-hmm.
depending on the interest at hand forming.
Yeah.
And when there's either drama between cliques and outside people of the clique, or there's fights within the clique
Mm-hmm.
itself, that can cause huge drama, right? And so, for
Sure.
example, my current guild, there was a clique who one of them was the officer, had a disagreement with the GM, right? Felt
Mm-hmm.
disrespected. They left. The officers left, and the whole clique left also, right? And
Yeah.
so the two officers, three officers left, right? And then you had
Yeah.
10 people leaving also, and these people were like on the whole time. So that goes back to harming the guild itself, right? So,
Yeah.
and I felt bad because the GM was actually going through a rough time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. So there was a huge fight in there. Like one of the officers felt disrespected, like the GM was calling her stupid or something, and
Yeah.
she's like, "I'm not going to take it," and left. Now I heard what happened. I personally think there might have been a bit of an overreaction there, right? But
Okay.
that's how it is. They left, and now they have their own guild. Right.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that
And
part.
so from there, I
Yeah.
mean, there's always been guild drama. I go back to my previous guild. There's people.
Yeah.
So I was running cutting edge. Um, the
Yeah.
week day before we got the kill, one person, one of the tanks who was the officer was missing. So we brought another tank in,
Yeah.
and then the next day when we got the kill, that same tank was brought in, not the officer, right? And he did not get the
Oh.
kill, and then we stopped raiding after that. And he was
Oh.
mad, dude. He was like the officer did not get back in. Holy shit, dude. That would
So,
that
I
would
mean,
be
what
infuriating.
did he
Like
do?
you spend all this time raiding, and you one day away and you
Yeah.
don't get it. That is rough,
That's
right?
rough. So, like, how did it go? How did it
I
play
don't know.
out?
I stopped logging on after that. Yeah, because
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, I'm
Okay.
done. I don't want to raid anymore. But I heard it was pretty.
That can
I
get
heard they were
messy.
pretty
Yeah.
mad.
I I mean, do you know what the justification was for bringing the
Um,
person over the officer?
because the day he was missing, right? He was gone, and the other tank, and it was going
Yeah.
smoothly. So his reasoning was like, "Oh, it's still going smoothly. I don't want to change it again." He's not necessarily the other guy was doing bad, but this guy
Okay.
was doing good, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
if he looks like he knows mechanics, he's doing good. I don't want to bring someone in again and potentially risk that.
Have them maybe
Not relearn
relearn
it,
the
but
whole
like
fight.
you miss a
Yeah.
day and
Or
we saw new phases and stuff, right? Right, new parts and
yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't go close.
Or yeah, not
Exactly.
relearn, but learn.
So,
I guess. Yeah.
well, not new parts. We got just closer, right? We cleaned up mechanics more, right? So his reasoning was like
Mm-hmm.
that, but I mean, it's only one day. He would have been fine, right? He's a good player. So, but he got sad, and other people did also.
Yeah.
I mean, other people, as I mean, early on in progression, this would happen is that if someone
Mm-hmm.
did not make it like one or two times, and they had to bring someone new,
Yeah.
that's it. They out.
Ooh.
But this was the more like this was the most brutal one, right? But back then, like, at least they had time to find new guilds, right? All of that stuff.
Sure.
This was brutal. This was absolutely
Like
brutal.
right.
So
This was like
yeah,
at the end of the
nearing the
tier
end
when as
because
soon as you get
I
the kill,
mean, it
you're
was like
done.
3/4, I would say, or 2/3 to 3/4, right? Like we
Yeah.
weren't gonna raid after that anyway, right? Because everyone was burnt out. So it was like get the kill
Sure. Yeah.
because we already geared anyway, pretty much, right? We don't need it. So get the kill. That's it. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
So one time kill, he got kicked out the day before. So
Jeez. I mean, that's rough. Well, yeah, that's like, I mean, that's some pretty tasty drama, I would say. Yeah. I mean, in terms of like my sort of going through stuff, I mean, I've been through positions where I've disagreed with raid leaders about like people they brought to fights, kind of similar to what you're mentioning, but not necessarily. Taking certain raiders over other more recently or other people waiting on the bench who deserve the spot more because they have better logs or whatever it might be, better performance, better attendance even. Also, just fitting in with the guild better. Like a favoritism, I've always seen like even when someone tries to play completely straight in terms of like selecting the raid team or loot distribution. There's always there might be some favoritism. Not really huge drama over there, but some bits. You and I, we also we had we had our guild lead. Oh wait, no, you weren't there actually anymore.
Yeah, I moved on.
We but you know of the guild lead having an issue specifically with one person, just conflict, conflict, a clash of egos essentially. I mean, I haven't really had any other. I probably created some drama myself as well, where I know when Star Wars: Old Republic came out, um, I was a guild lead at that time for a guild that was at the time the number 2 guild on the server. We had multiple number 2 guilds. We were a 10-man raiding guild though, so we had an advantage over the bigger 25-man raiding guilds. Or yeah, it was 25-man. So we had a little tight knit group. One of the people who was in there. It was and actually few of the people who were in there because they still hang with us to this day. This was back in
Right.
Cataclysm. I guild quit though to go play Star Wars: Old Republic, and so that left a a bit of um, a sudden vacuum that I didn't necessarily prepare the guild for. That it created some issues, but ultimately they figured out they were fine. So yeah, I've never been in anything as bad as some of the stuff you've said recently,
Yeah, it's pretty funny, right?
especially with that. Oh Jesus! And so yeah, I haven't been anything that bad, but I've seen some bits, and usually the way it was always these issues you could always see coming a little bit, just because guild lead or leadership in general doesn't communicate the everything to the T in terms of, like you mentioned, their recruitment philosophy, their loot distribution philosophy, like things they want, every little detail that they want to. I would say probably because I mean that's a lot of work to do first of all, but we also had, I think the leadership we were working under was burnt out. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say so, to an extent.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, going beyond that, like we could get into like, I mean, like, we can get into recruitment a little bit. Like that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I think that's like probably defines the guild. Like if you were like you have been in charge of recruiting, like how did you usually like go about it?
So this is how I
Would you
approached it.
say?
So
Yeah.
looked for, I think attitude is a big thing, right? You
Mm-hmm.
could be as good as you want in the world, but if you're not willing to, I think, have the proper attitude of either making sacrifices to the guild or like not having an ego per se, because that can ruin the experience for a lot of people, and that could lead to people not
Yeah.
showing up, people having complaining, and
Yeah.
or just ruining progression, right? So attitude is a
Sure.
big thing. Skill level, I would look at parses and stuff, and see mechanics and skill level. I do think that to an extent people can always get better, but I think having consistency,
Okay.
attitude, and maybe a decent show of skill level and mechanics, depending on like what the guild you're recruiting for, right, is what's important.
Yeah. How do you think? What sort of effort would you take? Let's say if you were a part of a guild's leadership group, what effort would you take to sort of like what lengths would you go to help improve someone's performance?
Let's see. I would say, I mean, you can always sit down with them, lead them to the wowhead or whatever. You lead to the sites, go through the parses,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, half of it is mechanics, right? You can always help someone with mechanics. Helping with classes can be
Mm-hmm.
a bit harder, but if you see someone underperforming, you can either hook them up with another DK or whatever, or priest or shaman or
Yeah.
whatever in your guild, or you can
Yeah.
maybe lightly tell them, however you want to approach lightly, right? Just be like, hey, we need
Yeah.
to pick it up a little bit more, or
Get
yeah,
good.
maybe
Would
you
you
could
say
if you
get
want to say
good?
that.
Is that
I'm not opposed to that. Maybe some people would think that's offensive,
yeah.
right? But
Y- y-
I mean,
right.
you gotta like be like, I would say that you gotta at least let them know of the danger of getting benched, maybe. Be like, hey, this is what's happening. We do like you, but you need to pick it up a little bit,
Yeah.
type of deal. I mean, there's resources out there.
Hmm.
Wowhead,
Yeah.
Warcraft logs is huge, right? Literally, you can compare your breakdown of what you press to other people, right?
Absolutely.
And I think the biggest thing people mess up
Yeah.
is they do not read their tooltips. I have not told you the amount of times I've helped people who are the same classes as me. All they
Yeah.
need to do is read the tooltips, and they see like this little interaction happening between the buttons, right? And like, oh my god, I didn't even
Hmm.
know that. And it's like, like this
Ooh.
triggered
Wow.
this, or like this increases this buff, right? And they don't realize that,
Yeah.
and then they just keep going. They press the button.
Holy
Oh, it's
shit.
all good, but oh wait, there's this interaction I don't know about. On the other one is,
This happened in our guild?
oh, I mean general. I mean even past that, I've had people
Okay.
come up to me and like, oh, I see you rating on this boss. I'm starting this boss, or I see you've gone this far in Mythic. I'm still in Heroic. Can you help me out a little bit? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Why not? I got some time, right? And then also in my
Yeah.
guilds also, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Sure.
the biggest thing, tooltips, no one reads at them. You'd be surprised. Like
Hmm.
honestly, the other thing is, people don't realize outside buffs, and WoW has done this a lot recently with like borrowed system power, and like Azerite, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You might get like a buff that increases your strength like 5,000 or something, right? No one,
Hmm.
no one pays attention to that because they, oh, it's just a buff, If it happens, it happens, right? But putting your
Right.
cooldowns,
Oh,
exactly, right?
aligning them.
Like if you have a proc, like
Yeah.
a really skilled player will play around the procs, right? Like if you have a proc that, say, every 40 minutes, every 40 seconds, it comes up, right? You get a huge buff in
Yeah.
strength. Waiting for that is huge, right? But most people like it's just a proc. If it happens during my burst, oh, that's it. I'm good, right? But if it doesn't happen, oh, it's just a proc, right?
Yeah.
But people don't play around these
Right.
outside procs, these outside increases in power, and that leads to like this
Yeah.
downfall in DPS. So I mean, that's two majority things, and you'll be surprised just saying that how much it helps people. But other than that, you could.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta send them to the Discord probably, like the class Discords that they have. They are
Class
really
discords
helpful.
and stuff. Yeah.
But
They
yeah,
yeah, I can definitely vouch for that. Like when I started, I mean the resources that are at players' hands these days are kind of insane compared to what they used to be. And like you can go to Wowhead, you can go to Icy Veins. I don't know if Noxic is still a thing. I think it might
I
be
think no, I think
updated
it's pretty
still.
bad. Yeah, it's not.
No, no, I'm not saying. I'm not saying it. Like there are obviously stuff that's better than the other stuff, but there are resources out. So many. My point is that there are resources out there that people can like pursue and go through that like will help improve them. Like if you're a gray parser, there's like unlimited resources. Like even Noxic will help you. Like there's no doubt that like it can probably help you in some way, or Icy Veins, or Wowhead, or like you said, Class Discord. And then that's besides all that, just going to people within your guild, like you said, people have come
Right.
to you. Um, so yeah, yeah, of course, like that's like probably the best way to approach it. Usually, sometimes though that doesn't even doing it that way, like in the nicest way possible. Not telling people directly to quote unquote get good, as I've heard certain other
Yeah,
people
exactly.
say. Yeah, we've had issues where like I don't know if you remember this Pharaoh Druid, or that our guild used to have, where we we worked with them as much as
Right.
possible, and they just ultimately got pissy that they were being left out of spots. But it's like we've tried to help you, and there's nothing really we can do if you can't improve, because we have competition. And that's another thing, tying it sort of back, because this whole conversation began with like recruitment philosophy. Always be recruiting.
Yeah.
Like people used to say always be casting for healing. Kind of the idea would be always be recruiting for, if you're a recruiter in a guild, because you will always have turnover, transition, and it keeps those last few spots. Even if you get competition in like the up top of your DPS logs, that's a fantastic thing. Like who cares if there's competition? That's just good for the guild, as long as, again, you said their attitude fits with the guild as well. Like that's what you want. And if, to me, as someone who like kind of did recruiting for Mythic for the majority of Legion. I would say because I did it for the guild before I joined our guild, and then I did it again for, uh, the guild that we were in. I'd say like having at least 25, 26 people, like 5, 6 people willing to sit on the bench, people willing to rotate and work with each other. Like say, hey, like my schedule next week is not so great. Let me raid this week. Like having people who are willing to help each other out, and like it helps. One, it helps the guild, gives the guild more options, but two, helps prevent burnout because you can just like bench people here and there and they'll be okay with it. Like they sometimes people don't want to raid be 100%, have 100% attendance, right? Sometimes, I mean, I admit I needed breaks too. Like sometimes like if I remember we had a really strong healing team and we would rotate. Like I was totally okay with that because it's just sometimes you just need to chill from wiping a bunch of different times, because someone didn't stand into something, or someone did stand into something and that wiped the raid. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of how I see recruitment to circle it
Right.
back to
Yeah.
what we were going on about. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be rough
So
sometimes.
yeah. So I mean, in terms of guilds coming up with Shadowlands, like, what are you gonna be looking
So
for?
I
What do you
might switch
think?
guilds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this current guild I'm in, I mean, it's going through some rocky spots.
I mean, it's dead, right? It's definitely
Don't say that,
dead.
Rom. Okay. It's going through rocky
Okay.
times. Okay. Be respectful. No, it's
But it's dead.
it's not
It's
dead.
dead. Okay.
Okay. It's just missing a
Yeah.
lot of people.
It's still real to you, damn
Exactly.
it.
It's real to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am looking for a more. I guess I wouldn't say higher end. I might raid again, Mythic. Maybe 2 days. Well,
Yeah.
no more than 2 days. That's for sure. But
For
at the
sure.
very least,
Yeah.
heroic. But I'm looking for a guild at the very least that's more social and has more Mythic Plus going on. Because at the very least, I like doing Mythic Plus daily. So
Yeah.
I mean, this guild I'm in, they do Mythic Plus sometimes, but not to the level I'm looking to do. So
Mhm.
at the very least, a higher end guild I'm going to be looking at.
Are you looking at it enough so that you can like sell runs?
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily need. I mean, there's organizations you can do that with already, if you want to do that. Like
Mhm.
it's a pure
Yeah.
gold, not money, right? So, but you can do that
Yeah.
already if you get not high enough IO. But this is more for enjoyment also,
Sure.
because I think pugging can be kind of painful sometimes. So I'd rather
Yeah.
just have a guild that I know is good and run with them. For just do random keys here and there.
Sure.
And if I happen to get some guild from carrying people, gold I mean, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Sure. That makes sense. Pay for the
Yeah.
subscription.
Pay for gold
Gold
shire.
subscription. Yeah. Yeah. You never know. You never. I mean, yeah. Those dancing dancers don't pay for
Exactly. Okay,
themselves.
you need to be throwing that gold out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think I'm probably looking for something similar. I just recently came back to WoW, and I'm still feeling out whether or not I want to raid. I have some people helping me get some gear, and I'm healing my way through some keys. I'm enjoying the key aspect again. Like I've done just a few, but I just healed a key. Actually, matter of fact, with you, that
Yeah,
was
it was so
probably higher
painful.
than what I should have been doing. Yeah,
No
it's still, we
externals,
finished it on time.
no healing.
It was not painful. It was actually pretty smooth overall for the most
How many
part.
times did the tank die? I think like 20 times, 30 times,
I think it
50
was
times,
like
50 times.
one
Okay.
time, maybe, but I don't think it
70,
was my
80
fault.
times. That's okay. I
But
understand.
yeah, the point is, you can shut up now. Point is that yeah, pushing keys is pretty fun. But being that it's an expansion, I'm still not quite sure what I want to do. Mythic rating would be good. I am kind of a bit of a parse whore. Um, I don't care about loot. I don't care about any of that. I just want a good parse. I just like orange numbers on my next to my name, and as a healer, that's, I don't know, just very satisfying. So might do that. Might do just very casual though, and then maybe also push keys. But I also said the exact same thing heading into BFA, and then I quit BFA 2 mythic bosses
Yeah.
in. So we'll see.
I mean, BFA
We'll
was
see how
not.
Shadowlands go. I mean,
BFA
BFA
was
was
not
trash
fun
too.
to play.
What was that? No, it was, yeah, it was absolutely trash. And to be honest, it's still like, it is painful to gear up. Like there are so many systems that like and interactions between systems, and it just makes it like gearing up you have to like work your way through this web of like, okay, I need to check this and this for the week, and do this vision, and do these dailies, and I need to make sure I find rotate the vendor on the perfect day because they rotate the corruptions they saw. It's like it's just unnecessarily complicated. So hopefully Shadowlands simplifies that a bit, trims it up, and trims the fat, and makes it less grindy, which they've said they want to do, but we'll see. So yeah, but get back to back to guilds. I mean, so first of all, we didn't. We probably should have started with this honestly. How many like guilds have you been in terms of like being leadership and like or guild lead,
leadership
if
two.
at all?
Yeah.
Two. Okay. What was the other one? I know one of them. How was your experience in the other
It was.
one?
I mean, it was okay. All the higher end higher ends that the ones I've been in, I was as a player
Mm-hmm.
because the amount of I realized that the amount of work that requires in a more higher end guild is completely different from like a medium, like low mythic type of guild, right? So I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
just focus as me as a player versus on the guild per se. So, but
Sure.
then, so as in the in the like the low mythic heroic guild, the other one was better, but you still run into like the issues where the guild leader wants to transition the guild into like a better mythic guild, right? And
Yeah.
the raiders are not ready for that, right? So you have the raiders aren't ready, and he has to like start recruiting. Like, do you bench these current players and then get new players? Do you try to get these players better? People might not be
Yeah.
showing up because they're too pretty casual about it. They're not used to checking it in with the guild leader, being like, "Hey, I can't come today," or showing up consistently.
Absolutely.
And so that's what the
Yeah.
problem was again. And I think that's a huge problem if you're going to be like an officer. From what I've seen being like in these low mythic guilds as an officer is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the goal I think a lot of these guilds are trying to get better, and there's so much work you have to do to get there. It's,
Yeah. To go from sort of one level of rating, let's say just going from heroic to mythic to the like that to move from one level to like that next echelon is just,
right.
I mean, that's so so difficult. And then you're also putting so it's not just difficult for the guild, it's difficult for your raiders too because like you said they signed up for one thing and now their expectations have like the pressures put on them have been raised so much. Even the early bosses of mythic tend to be pretty easy. I would still say that usually the later bosses on heroic are still easier for the most part, and as they should
Yeah,
be.
for
So
sure. But I guess like that false sense of security, like
yeah,
we're ready for the rest of mythic.
sure, yeah, it does, and people might take that for granted. Probably you're probably right there. They take it for granted, and they're not. They just get bitch slapped when they they start wiping
Right.
on like some like 20 raiders have to be perfect on mechanics usually, which is the way mythic rating goes. Like you start to lose one early in a fight and it's just the uphill battle just becomes a climb, rather than it just becomes, rather than something that you can do, it becomes almost impossible. Every mistake is punished so
Exactly.
much more,
And then
so
people, once you start
yeah.
wiping, people get frustrated easily, especially people who are not used to it, who are not expecting it. So
Yeah.
that's what I've seen from my experiences as an officer. Is that's like the hardest part. Even like in the more casual guilds, when they're just doing heroic, I don't think it's a big deal. I think a lot of the trouble there is more social drama. So
Yeah.
like personally, when in my first guild, I mean, you were there also, right? I led the
Mhm.
alt heroic raid, right? And that's similar to like how the more casual guilds would raid, right? And so
Yeah.
that was pretty chill. Just show up. I mean, I just showed up once a week, right? Did my gathered up
Mhm.
the raiders. The problem I faced though is people wanting carries on the alts, right? And so I try to
Yeah.
limit like, hey, I need to be this eye level and be decent at your thing. I prefer your main though, right? Just because
Yeah.
I guess sometimes people
Yeah.
don't need it, but then people would be like, I don't want to hear this from you. Okay, just take my alt. It will be fine. And maybe, right? But it's such a struggle.
Yeah,
right? Let's
it
say
makes
the
it.
average
Yeah,
is, I guess Mythic is like 470, right? I think it's 470 right now, and
sure,
465 is,
sure.
or 460 is in heroic, right? People coming in like 430,
Mm-hmm.
440, right? And like, just take me. And
Yeah.
because I create two things. A, the times are going to be hard to kill the bosses, right? That means the raiders are not
Mm-hmm.
raiders have to be mechanically good because you don't have the DPS anymore, right? Because all of them are usually on ults or
You don't.
stuff,
You
right?
can't just burn through. Yeah.
Because most of them have the gear
Yeah.
already. So everyone's on like 460, right? But then you have someone who's like on
Mm-hmm.
440 or two people on 440, and then you don't have anyone who's 475 carrying that 440 DPS, right? So
Right.
that was like the biggest problem is people wanting free carries and no one able. I mean, other raiders don't want to provide that because they're like, why should they get carried and I actually had to gear up by myself, right?
I I don't. I think you had G quit this by this time. But especially towards the end of Legion, the guild that you and I, or you had G quit, but I was still in. Uh, our leadership started showing favoritism towards certain people who they would bring into the guild, whether they were, buddy buddy with this person who was new to the guild, or if they would bring
Yes.
in their literal girlfriend, and that
I
was
remember that. I
that
remember
did
that.
not necessarily.
That was
Yeah,
funny.
that because okay, I don't recall if they necessarily had the appropriate gear scores or gear levels, but the performance certainly wasn't there, and it was I in fact I'm pretty sure the gear wasn't there, and then maybe people like you said, even leadership would start bringing their alts, and yeah, that just became such a huge problem because that sets
Exactly.
precedent, the way down, like and then leadership would get baffled, like, why are these runs so difficult? And it's like, well, you know to put it lightly, you set this precedent, and this is, your sort of shit to deal with now, but that was not really corrected, and we just kind of kept continuing to struggle through that, and for the whole tier. So you said you
I
remember
do.
that, right? I'm pretty sure you
No,
G
I've
quit
heard
by
about
then.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty
Fun
funny, yeah.
times.
Honestly, funny from an outside
Yeah.
perspective.
Right. I mean, of why I could see that for sure. Not fun from an internal perspective, where yeah, the lines had to be drawn somewhere, and I was just the recruiter. Like, I was just the guild recruiter, but it was not a good start because usually we tried to start people off on those recruitment runs to like get an idea of their parses and their handling of mechanics, even though it's, night and day compared to Mythic, but at least it's somewhere to start to assess someone, and for them to see the shit shows that we sometimes had on heroic runs was just, oh, it was great. It was great. So yeah. Anyways, I think we're looking
For
to
sure.
wrap this up. Yeah. But before we do, you want to go into anything about like what you've been up to lately, or like what you've been doing in the gaming
I don't
world?
know. I'm just waiting for beta. Where's my beta key?
Yeah, beta. I have not had I checked earlier today. Nothing. Nothing in my email.
Unfortunate.
You been playing any
Yeah,
Overwatch or
I've
anything
been
like
playing a
that?
little bit of Overwatch, but I'm just waiting for Genji
Yeah.
to get nerfed.
Genji still
Well,
not
they
nerfed,
have
right?
nerfs
Still
planned, but
pretty.
it might not be enough. But Genji's broken, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's been pretty
Yeah.
rough. I've seen on the meta. Like, just, I mean, it's nice that the meta is different than, but it's a little, the pendulum has swung a little too far
Yeah.
the other way
It's
with
just
Genji.
it's just boring.
Uh,
It's not fun to play against.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I've like I said, been playing Warcraft. I haven't really been playing Overwatch much lately. We'll probably get back into that, but I'm in the gearing process right now, which is a hell of a sort of grind. So once that grind is over, I'll probably lean more. Also been streaming a little bit, and then also you and I have been planning out our political podcast, which, I'm just
Of
throwing in a
course,
little
yeah.
tease right now. Yeah. So yeah, we've been, that's coming. Just to, keep an ear
Right.
out for that.
And so you say you're streaming?
Yeah. I am. Been streaming a
Where are you
lot.
at? What's your
I
Twitch at?
It is at the Rom Show. or just the ROM show, ROM show, all one word. So yeah, I've been getting quite a few bots
Very
watching me, which
nice.
has been great. And then two or three people occasionally I might know 100% of them. I have actually like only two legitimate, authentic followers who I don't have any clue who they are, but uh, and of course I interact with people. We've raided, we've played some Overwatch, some ranked Overwatch even. So that's been fun. So at the ROM show, just again if you want to hear, keep an eye out on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than that, I think we're wrapping up here. This has been I'm
I'm
Rom.
Ash.
That's Ash. Yeah, that's Guild Watch episode number 5
GamerWatch.
done and dusted.
You
What
said
did I
Guild
just say?
Watch.
Guild Watch. That is episode number 5 of Gamer Watch done and dusted. We
Done
will
and
be
dusted.
editing that, and yeah, done and dusted.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one, guys. Take it easy.
Have a good
See
day.
ya. Bye.